technology challenge this afternoon. But we're recording. So we are at 1:30. We'll give, I know a couple of folks won't be joining us today, but I will go ahead and get started on checking, making sure we have a quorum before we start with the agenda. Denise, you're here. Joe Duncan. Seeing Joe yet. Okay. Saw Eric. Yep.
Wouldn't miss it.
Excellent. That's the. I appreciate the enthusiasm, Eric.
That's part of the month.
James Lehman, I see you here. Thank you. Mr. Tony.
Present.
He's not going to be here. Some sort of like UVM Health Network bigwig meeting or something. Who is not going to be here? Erica, I think I saw you here.
Present.
Erica's here. Thank you. What'd you do with Eric this week, today?
So I have Eric at BED for a cybersecurity training from the Department of Energy.
Yeah, he told me that. It's like, oh. So I was going to give him grief, but then when he said it was cyber, I'm like, well, how can, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, very, very important. So it's good.
Yeah, so we're, let's see. I think we have a quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, we're still waiting to see if Joe Duncan and is Mr. Lone major now?
Yes.
Major. Now, as far as guests, I see Mr. Zanin from the governor's office. I see AJ Van Tassel. Mr. Lone was?
Yes.
Okay. JK joining us, or is he doing other things?
He is doing.
Michelle, I see the general counsel joining us from Michigan.
Hello.
And here, I see Colonel Kreider. Colonel Kreider.
Hello.
See Mr. Kaiser. And then we also have Ben Montross from A&R DEC.
Yep. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Ben. And then Dylan Lee also from the Guard, correct? General Knight's office?
Negative. Dylan Lee, member of the public, just here observing and learning more.
I'm sorry. I thought we had. Okay. Lieutenant Colonel Galpo. Wasn't there someone with the last name of Lee that was joining from the Guard's office at times?
That was Jeff Lee. Sometimes that's Colonel Gallipo's deputy.
So I had the last name right. So I was still beginning to think I was losing my mind. So, okay.
It's the most common last name in the world, so can't blame you.
Well, welcome, Dylan. You, I think, have the distinction of maybe in the year being the first one from the general public to have joined that wasn't associated with one of the organizations that has a specific interest in this.
I'm honored to have the distinction, and I'll expect my plaque in the mail.
Yeah,
It should be a door prize. It really should.
yeah. Just keep your eye out for it. We'll try and get that to you.
Thank you all.
Trying to think if there's anyone else that I'm missing. I think we're good for right now. All right, let's get started. First order of business is the go over the agenda quickly. So we're going to go through, review any corrections or comments from November's last meeting recap. Then we have Ben Montross from the State of Vermont Agency of Natural Resources, Department of Environmental Conservation, going to give us an update on activities from the EPA and work that they're doing that are cybersecurity based. That would be good for everyone to just kind of stay plugged in on that. Appreciate you joining us today, Matt. Then we're going to get into, we have the strategic plan and the annual report, which I think we're in pretty good standing on from what I saw for comments. But we'll give one last go around, and then we'll need to vote to accept that as being ready for submission to the legislature in a couple weeks after the budget address. Then any open items, and we'll adjourn. Did anybody have any items they wanted to add or comment on for the agenda today? Excellent. We'll use that, but we can always, if anybody has anything come up, by all means, let us know. So, did anyone have any comments, corrections, clarifications from the last meeting recap that's on the website? I'll pause for about 15 seconds. Either raise your hand or feel free to speak out. Not gonna lie, 15 seconds of dead airspace is really killing me. Okay. Hearing none, we will keep that up as published. Ben, do you have a presentation? Do you want to do any screen sharing, or do you want to just give a verbal presentation at this point?
Yeah, no slides or anything, just some info and update from my end.
So I want to turn it over to you. Feel free to introduce yourself, give a little bit more background about you and your role and your team's responsibilities. So,
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Sean. So I'm Ben Montross. I'm the Drinking Water Program Manager for the Public Drinking Water Program. So Sean said I'm within the Agency of Natural Resources, Department of Environmental Conservation, and we regulate public drinking water systems. So if you have heard this already, I apologize, but the kind of standard spiel with that is a public water system is any source of water for drinking purposes that serves 25 or more people for 60 days or more out of the year. So it's not necessarily having to do with ownership. A lot of people think that a public water system is a city water or town water, which it is, but it's also highway rest stops and bed and breakfasts and campgrounds and state parks and things like that. So there's currently 1,344 public drinking water systems in the state. Majority of those are offline, are literally a well to a pressure tank to a building, or a well to a storage tank to a series of buildings, and there isn't a risk or vulnerability for cybersecurity. But what we do experience in Vermont either is full-on remote control or human machine interfaces and things like that, or more often also is alarms and reporting and things that convey water system operation to the operator. So every public drinking water system needs to have a licensed operator in order to be compliant and to run the system. And we are starting to increase the cyber aspect of what their expectations are and what the trainings are and all that sort of thing. We have been getting, EPA has tried, this is going to sound worse than it is. EPA has tried a few different ways to implement regulations pertaining to cybersecurity protection in the water sector, so both drinking water and wastewater. The first couple were kind of suggestions, and then it turned into an interpretive memo that we have authority under existing rules, but that memo got rescinded, so now they're looking into other options. But basically, taking all the procedural stuff out of it, the EPA and the White House and the National Security Council is stressing the importance of cybersecurity preparedness at drinking water systems. We in Vermont have previously intentionally done very little and did not want to put all of our eggs into a single basket in order for that basket to then be published or publicized. Up until recently, we had very liberal public records information request obligations. So we didn't want to have things fall into the wrong hands. So we just didn't collect the information about what was out there and who had what kind of controls. Over the summer, though, we worked to develop a survey that we sent out to our public water systems. We asked about a dozen questions, some of which were just identifying who are you, where are you from type things, what water system do you represent? And then we drilled into the aspects of the water system that we're concerned about from a cyber standpoint. So long and the short of it is we've identified three, and we've created three tiers of concern in Vermont. And the first being tier one, and that's some web-based or computer-based integration in the system that can create a change. An easy example of that is overfeeding of a chemical. Some nefarious actor can hack in and overfeed a chemical, making the water unsafe for consumption. We've seen instances or reports of that happening elsewhere nationwide. So that's our tier one, is they can actually do something or change something. Tier two, we've identified as having reports or alarms or notifications. So it would need to be some sort of concerted attack, but an example for that is there's a water storage tank up on the hill. There's a storage alarm, there's a storage tank low level alarm that would go off and page or alert the operator if the storage tank volume dropped to below a certain level. And then somebody could go up, turn off the alarm, and then go up and drain the tank or something like that. So it would be a little bit more coordinated effort. But so we've called those tier two. So it's just reporting where they've got something that calls back to the plant to say the water storage tank is 3/4 full, or an alarm in case it drops below or above a certain level. And then there's the tier three, which is pretty much everybody else, which is just offline by offline, I don't mean air gapped, I mean completely analog, basically, where they just do not have any sort of integration. Everything's local and there's no connectivity. So we sent out 660 inquiries. We got about 570 responses, which is really good success rate for us. We're assuming, and pretty much once we've looked at the results, we've seen that those that didn't reply, we're not worried about. We understand the systems well enough to know whether it's a concern or not. But there's 100 tier one systems, there's about 60 tier two systems, and then the rest are tier three systems. So we see these systems either once every 2.5 or 3 years, or once every 5 years. And as part of our routine inspections, we're rolling out cybersecurity preparedness awareness. And for the tier one systems, we're requiring a vulnerability assessment before every routine inspection. And for the tier two systems, we will do it as part of our inspections. We're relying on the EPA vulnerability questionnaire. And in order to do those assessments, the water system needs to engage with the EPA or their contractor, which right now is Horsley Witten, or they can engage with the Vermont Rural Water Association. So Rural Water is a nonprofit group that is charged with helping to protect and support rural drinking water systems, of which, I mean, we are the definition of that. Rural Water was granted, Vermont Rural Water was granted one of 2 pilots nationwide, the other being in Oregon, to have a designated staff on site and on their team to provide cybersecurity support. That person has gone to DC for training, done all sorts of other sorts of trainings, and they are going to start rolling out on-site assessments and support for public water systems, which is really great. I mean, this is Vermont. We know kind of how fiercely independent things can be here. So having somebody from an organization that these water systems know, with actually in person going face to face, is really important and will be very successful, as opposed to, and I'm not knocking it whatsoever, the EPA's contractor is remote, is out of state, is a consulting firm that a lot of these water systems haven't heard of. So we've given the Rural Water Association and their circuit rider a targeted list of the tier one systems that are in need of assessments now, and they're already hitting the ground running. The rest we're reaching out to and encouraging them and giving them the sign up list to engage with the EPA. And actually, as of this morning, we were engaged in some of the folks on the call today. I forwarded the information and the invite, but the EPA and CISA have scheduled a series of regional calls. And the one for Region 1, which is New England states, will be on February 5th to engage and receive a region-specific threat briefing from CISA and EPA with respect to cybersecurity. So EPA is pushing this. They are very supportive. They are very involved, as is CISA, which is great. It's almost too good. It's almost like drinking from a fire hose. There's so many resources right now. So we're trying to distill that and condense that for systems. Looking forward to that meeting to do the same. And I think, I think a lot of folks in Vermont don't necessarily understand what's at stake here. I think that a lot of them are like, well, we're small. We don't have to worry about it. That they don't realize, the nation state attacker that has the bot running and just looking for anything, regardless of who or where or how big, that it's just a matter of time. So the region-specific threat briefing will be interesting, so we can say, hey, this system that's the same size as you in Maine had this happen, or this system in New Hampshire had that happen, as opposed to this system that's 10 times your size in Texas or whatever. It's been hard to kind of draw reasonable parallels to Vermont systems to kind of make that, to help that message drive home. So hopefully we can have some of that information. We'll get some more info. We'll engage with our systems. We'll work on our the results of our survey and really push towards the assessments and protection of all those gaps that are out there. So I think that's my spiel. Sean, I don't know if there's anything else you had expected or wanted me to cover, but I think that that's largely it from my end, unless there's questions. Oh, and Sean, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Yeah, I think we were all just digesting for a minute.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It sounded really, really good.
I was, and I'll never be able to like restate it in such an eloquent manner. So we're in trouble. I know what I'm saying is, I'm curious if our next meeting is March, if it would be appropriate to get rural water and you to join us again, and maybe we get an overview of their circuit rider program, and what's going on, because I have a Venn diagram somewhere that's showing that there's this sweet spot of overlap between what's going on with in your space, it is a sector in critical infrastructure, so it is of importance to the Cybersecurity Council here, right? But also we have this grant program. Eric Foran is probably the one that's and John Tony and David Kaiser are most intimate with it, but that's from the state and local cybersecurity grant program, right? So that's going to go to, and in many instances, these water systems may qualify for funding through that, right? So there may be a really good opportunity to like advance it from everybody's perspective and make stronger some of these water providers that are using technology. So do you think getting rural water in here 2 months from now would be reasonable?
It sounds good to me. I mean, it makes sense to try to get them on board. I would hope so. I can ask them.
Yeah, if you can let them know, and then I'll reach out probably in a couple of weeks and try and get them scheduled. But it seems like there's a lot going on in that space, and it's good to understand.
Sure. Yep.
Did anybody else have questions for Ben? Well, thank you, Ben. We're going to get into the joys of reviewing document online for our annual report and strategic plan. You are welcome to stay on, but also understand if you've got more compelling things in your life to do than to watch us go through a Word document.
I will step away. If you need me, you know where to find me.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ben. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how there's like all of these, they're different vectors, but they're all kind of pointing at the same, at least a common group within Vermont that deserves attention, right? And meets all of is an audience to a bunch of different interests. So hopefully that stuff comes together and we can make progress on it. I said that, Eric, just as a reminder, so that if I forget it when we get going on like future phases as SLGP SLCGP project, you could remind me.
Got it.
Thank you. All right. Next we have review of the strategic plan. The goal today is to get any final thoughts incorporated and have a motion and approval of both the plan and the annual report so that after the governor's budget address, we can meet our obligation to submit this annually. So I'm going to stop sharing for the moment. Go. Let me know when you see it, wherever you are. Oh, thank you. I was watching for it here. There it is. We're seeing it. Thank you. All right, I'm going to jump down to we'll come back to the beginning. Don't look at the scrolling so that it doesn't make you car sick. So here's the strategic plan. I incorporated with one exception, and I'll explain that in a second. All of the changes that were, let me blow this up. For those that are at home. So we had gone through the last meeting in November, made some significant comments around reworking some of the stuff to like better be consistent throughout how the strategic plan aligns from goals and objectives to strategies. One of the things that was of initial concern by a number of folks was the idea that we had had some very specific targets, like a certain number of municipalities or organizations had completed tier 1, a certain number at tier 2, and a certain number at tier 3. And realizing that there is not dedicated funding to this, this will be kind of worked in conjunction with likely the work of the state and local cybersecurity grant program. We don't necessarily can't control that destiny exclusively, right? The funding may be a governor as to how much we can and can't accomplish within a given year, not necessarily capacity of partners or anything else. So I did remove those references and instead kind of described it as what I have in program objectives number 1, and that is to successfully complete a pilot program so that we will have, consider like a dry run, we will have feedback in order to reshape the program if needed to make it more successful. Refine the services, change those. So that's one area that it was probably a departure. So I'm going to pause there and see if anyone has questions or comments about that. Seeing or hearing none, I will keep going then. Oh wait, there's one other up here. I think we've addressed those. These were all kind of just trying to, I'll say, reshape them to be of a consistent voice throughout. The strategies didn't really change. I didn't really rework any of those. There wasn't significant feedback on them. And then again, there was this phased implementation that was originally laid out, where instead of laying out those phases, talking about how it's just going to focus on a pilot program or a proof of concept to ensure that we have it right. So, was there any, I think I'd sent this out. Boy, I think I got it out before Christmas because I want everybody to have it to look at over their holiday break. You did, right? Yeah, I know. So, is there any other feedback on the strategic plan as it sits? Are folks comfortable with it? Open to thoughts?
I think what you put together, Sean, is comprehensive, well considered, and there's a lot of work here, so thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Other feedback, comments, concerns with what the council will be submitting as a product of the group for the legislature, and for us to be then taking and turning around and figuring out how to turn this into actionable items over the course of the next calendar year? All right. Well, if you do, or at this point, right, once we vote on it, we won't be able to do anything any substantial edits to it. It'll have to stay as approved by the council. But if you find like typos, grammatical things, by all means, let me know. If you just happen to be perusing it on a Friday night because you need something to fall asleep to, by all means, let me know. But I'm gonna stop at that, and I think I addressed like all of the conversations we had last meeting about making sure that it was aligned throughout. We're going to go back to the top, and now we're going to deal with, in statute, we're obligated to submit an annual report on the workings of the council. I am someone that when I testified once early on in my career, a number of legislators acknowledged it and said they appreciated my brevity. So I tend to try and, even though I talk a lot, I try and make the reports very succinct. I'm not going to put a lot in there because then people can pick at it and stuff. It's best to be just, I found, direct. So I have established the executive summary that just kind of gives a quick overview on how the council developed the survey, administered the survey, looked at the results, and then developed their first full strategic plan. Good with folks? Concerns? Anything I missed from the work of the past year? I will keep going, and stop me, and if there is something that comes up. This year saw a fairly substantial turnover in the State House. I'm looking that way because the State House is right there. So I thought it would be at least good for context to include a summary of the enabling legislation for those that are new members over there, or I think now actually technology has a new Senate committee and a dedicated House committee again, correct? Yeah, so they may not have any of the context or background because the work for the creation of this legislation was done in both Senate and House government operations committees, respectively, 2 years ago.
Representative Sebelia is in the House.
She is in, yeah, she was actually the sponsor.
Yes, she was.
One of the sponsors. Yeah, her and Representative Chase. So good. She should recognize this then. So I just wanted to include that in there. So the the legislators that are reviewing it can at least have an understanding of what's in scope for us. Just go over the current membership. I don't think I am missing. I think I represent the latest updates, which was, I believe, the most recent one was the James Lehman from the Attorney General's office joining. We're missing any others? Any other changes at this point? Then I went into more detail, slightly more detail on the activities for calendar year 24, which was overhead, like how often we met. Then a little bit more of a write-up on the critical infrastructure survey that was conducted this summer, what went into it, what we had for responses. You will notice, oh, that's another thing. Amazing how 2 months is a long time. In the first iteration of this, I had a lot of like screenshot infographics I have stripped. There was concern about interpretation of those incorrectly, where I thought maybe they would help a point we were trying to make. There was concerns it could be interpreted something differently. So instead of trying to figure out a way to better do that, I stripped those all out. There are no images anymore in here or screenshots from the survey. I figure if there is interest, we could do that as part of testimony to the committee that has interest. And if they wanted to get into some of the details, we could do it in an executive session if the responses warranted. So none of the screenshots or anything are in here anymore. So it's purely just a write-up about the survey, and then those partners we engaged with, from the VIC to the broadband and League of Cities and Towns and everyone else, to get the responses that we did. And then just that the overall results, right, were 3 tiers of those individuals that have some sort of cybersecurity program, right, in answer to the positive. There are those that don't seem to have any active cybersecurity efforts, and then there's the somewhere in the middle, folks that have started something but may need assistance getting to the next tier. So very summarized, not in detail of the survey, and then the results of that were used to inform the development of the strategic plan. The next couple of items are the ones that are going to need folks to weigh in on. Right. So for many, we've probably not talked about this, and I'm actually going to read it to you. So the council, the Cybersecurity Advisory Council, will continue to meet on a bi-monthly basis. We established that at the November meeting. Its primary focus for 2025 will be delivery of the work outlined in the strategic plan, developing the 2026 annual report, and updating the strategic plan based on lessons learned in the first year. For the council members that are on the call, is there any concern with stating like those 3 council objectives for the year? Yeah, it's a continuation of what we are doing. It's not adding anything new, right? Other than we got to start working the strategic plan to a certain degree. Okay. And that's where the second section, right, where turning the strategic plan into action will require focus, effort, and resources. Relationships need to be fully developed. Inventories of critical infrastructure and essential supply chain providers completed. Delivery of services needs to begin. So Tony.
As far as the essential supply chain providers and understanding who they are, have we discussed, or could we discuss somehow getting this into our TPRM tool so we have a single source of truth for this?
We have not. Remind me what GPRM is.
Third-party risk management.
Oh.
So we have a fairly new tool that we can we can memorialize this in one place rather than using spreadsheets or going agency to agency to try to record them. So if we can get them all into our compliance tool, that'll work for us.
I think that's a great idea to, at the very least, explore, especially as it relates to state government inventories related to this. I'm not sure, right? If we go to UVM Medical Center, right, and we're working with them to figure out all their essential supply
Right.
chain folks, they probably don't want us keeping it, but maybe it's an opportunity to do state government and then as part of this, and then also to lead by example by showing the value of a risk management tool. So I like
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
I will make a note of that so that we can include that as we start to work the strategic plan. Any other questions, comments, ideas? All right. We only have. Now this is this the last section? Yes, it is. So this is the last one. So there is one open recommendation to the legislature, and that is the council recommending that the legislature possibly amend Act 71 to include someone from internet service providers and telecommunications. Because I don't know if folks remember, but when we were trying to develop the survey, it became apparent that we had a gap there, right? That we invited the Vermont Community Broadband Board in, we invited the Public Service Department in. We've got electric, water, we've got representation from gas, hospitals, but we're lacking like communications at all, any of the communications industries. So we had talked about this at that point. I made a note of it, and so I included it in the annual report, was to see if they'd be willing to amend the language. Is there any concern with following through that and including that in this year's annual report?
I guess my comment would be, I think it's critical that we do put this in there. If the last 2 years of floods told us anything, being able to have access to both falls under critical infrastructure, and without it does impede service and access and connection to the outside world for residents.
In recovery, right?
Yeah,
Response and
100%
recovery. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else want to provide thoughts on this?
I fully believe it's necessary. I'm just personally wondering how much of a narrative we're going to have to tell the providers to free up the time to join us.
Yeah, I don't. I think getting it through the State House will be the first step. You're right. We might. I don't know if we'll get an AT&T or Verizon, or I bet you T-Mobile would be willing to sit down with us.
Consolidated
Yeah.
TDS.
Right.
There's another.
But we have the Vermont Community Broadband Board, and most Vermonters are going to be eventually getting broadband internet through one of these rural communications utility districts. Like CUDS is the term, right? So we could get representation from there. So maybe we won't get like Comcast to join us, but maybe a rural provider. And that's what I'm hoping with somebody like TDS, which is a local telecommunications company. Like I said, I bet you T-Mobile would be willing to play. They've been a good partner. So you're right. It's going to be hard, but I think we should still try to.
Maybe more convincing coming from a member of the legislature as well.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's why it was not included 2 years ago, was the areas that were represented had like recognized constituency organizations that are in that building and lobbying on their behalf, right? There's somebody over there, or at least a couple organizations that lobby on behalf of hospitals. There's somebody over there that lobbies on behalf of electric utilities, and so they knew where to like go to ask for an appointment. There's the telecom and stuff. They're either big enough that they have their own lobbyists and they're doing their own thing over there, but there's not like this encompassing organization that, at least that I'm aware of, that has a presence over there, and so that's why it was omitted at that time, I believe. So, all right, we are going to, barring any other feedback, we are going to leave that in for any report, and that is the essence of the results of a year's work, is those handful of paragraphs. Kind of feels not so good when you distill it down to that. But if there's no other comments, questions, feedback, I will entertain a motion to accept the annual report as written.
I will
I
make a
make a
motion.
I
Sorry.
second it.
All
I
right.
second Denise's motion.
No, that was Erica.
Oh, Erica.
Erica. Thank you, Erica. Then JT was the second. Just making my notes. All right. Any discussion before we have a vote? Okay. All those in favor of the annual report as drafted, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you. All those not in favor, opposed, please either raise your hand or say aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Oh, I don't usually ask that. Oh, but that's a valid point. I should do that. Is anyone abstaining? Abstentions?
You need a gavel.
Okay.
That means it's unanimous.
Yes. All right. I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you all very much. I think we did November was a really thorough review that informed a lot of the changes. So I think that's what led us to get to this point now. I appreciate that. Bounce back over. Share the presentation. All right. Usually we're running out of time. We are done this month's formal agenda. So now we have questions and open discussion. Does anybody have any items that either they would like to bring up now, provide to me that you want me to investigate for future agenda item, future meetings, or any other items of discussion? Dylan, as a member of the public, this is the point by which also you can chime in if you have any questions or things that you would like to share with the council.
Thank you for the opportunity, but nothing today.
Thank you. All right. Well, I'm not going to belabor this, folks. I will give you 45 minutes back if we get a motion to adjourn, a second.
Motion to adjourn. This is Erica.
Thank you, Erica. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, James. All right. All those in favor, aye? Or raise your
Aye.
hand.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Noted with enthusiasm, JT. All those opposed? Excellent. All right. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you all very much. I will appreciate your time and we stop recording.